Okay, well, hey guys, this is Zach at Pello Fitness, and today Ansley and I are going to talk about how to exercise at home when you have kids, because absolutely this could be very frustrating. It can be a struggle for a lot of people. Um, but before we get into that, you guys know me pretty well. I'm just an online coach. I work with moms, primarily 35 to 45 years old, and I help them lose up to 20 pounds in 12 weeks, and just try to help them get their best body post having kids because it's definitely a different situation. Ainsley, let's go ahead. Tell us a little bit about what you do and who you serve.
Well, I'm Ansley Knopf, and I have trained in Flourish, which started out as a personal training and ended up evolving into, I got into precision nutrition and went to the L2 course and then moved through that and started specializing in prenatal, postnatal, pelvic floor. And then now it's all over integrative wellness, women's coaching. So I don't have a specific age demographic that I work with. It's pretty much people when they come to me, they're pretty much looking for something different than just 1,500 calorie diet meal plan. And it's really important to me to integrate all parts of life. So stress, sleep, their nutrition, fitness, adapting to every season of life. I like to involve hormones as much as possible as well with the female cycle and everything as well for best performance. So that's pretty much who I serve. I also do have a lot of moms, and that's the majority of my clients. But I don't have kids myself yet, so that's why I'm going to involve a professional who has kids himself and ask some questions that I get asked a lot from my clients, so we can get some real life experience answers for them. So glad to be here. Glad to be doing this with you.
That's awesome. Great. And I know you had a list. So Ainsley got a list of questions from, I think, her clients and some questions she had uh, about exercising with your kids. So she's going to kind of lead this almost in a interview format. She's going to ask me these questions, you guys. So if you guys have questions too about exercising at home with kids, go ahead and post below. And please, if you guys are struggling with this, go ahead and do hashtag the struggle is real below, okay? Because I guarantee, I think most people that have kids struggle with being able to get workouts at home with kids. So Ainsley, go ahead and shoot me, your first question, and we'll get to
Okay.
that.
One of the first questions, I actually get this often, and it's not always worded exactly like this. Sometimes it's more of like a flow of questions, but basically it comes down to this: how do you time? And this is relevant all the time, not just right now when everyone's in quarantine at home. But it's how do you find time to work out and still feel like you're spending enough time with your family? Like, is that something that is a struggle for you personally, or is that something you've discussed with your clients? You guys have figured out ways to kind of address, and especially I know for you as well, like working out isn't just a passion for us, it's our profession, it's our job. So it's even more important for you to be able to do that than maybe even just an average person, because you have to keep up with all the things. So what are your
Yeah,
thoughts
yeah.
on that?
Well, first of all, I'm a big believer. I mean, if you absolutely love something, do as much as as you want with it. But the general person that they don't necessarily love exercise. It's not like this is our passion, to work out. But I always say to my clients that it's a matter of finding what's the minimum amount of exercise that you can do and get results. So I'm a big believer, like I always tell my clients, zero cardio and 3 days per week workouts. That's my thing. I mean, I would probably say 90% of my clientele does that. And because I feel like exercise is a small portion of our life. It doesn't need to be done 6, 7 days a week. And I even have some clients doing 2 days a week. So you can get progress on very little exercise, like in terms of muscle definition and stuff, because so
Hmm.
much, so much of your result comes from food anyways. So maybe put more focus on food and a little bit less on the exercise, especially being a parent, because it's just that hard.
Yeah. Well, to kind of the next question, then it's not one we originally had, but because you bring it up and it is so important, if we were to place replace workout with, I don't know, maybe either like meal prep or meal planning. How do you incorporate that with a busy family life? Do you involve the kids? Is that something you do with your spouse? Like, how do you handle that?
At this point, as a parent, like I am not the best at that, to be honest. I'm not. I don't get the kids involved much. We, I actually do personally. I cook separate food for me sometimes because the food I cook, like now my wife will make food for her and the kids, something they like, but the food I eat is just too bland or too boring. So I actually do make something else that's easier. It's super easy what I make. I do like rice or potatoes in the oven, and I do a bunch of ground meat, and I just put it together. I like the flavor of it personally. But what I do highly recommend to families, I'm like, look, here's a couple things. Let the kids pick out some of the foods that you're going to
Mhm.
make, and they're going to eat it. So say to your kids when you go shopping, what foods do you want to eat for dinner? And just write down so they take ownership. I think that's a great way to do it. And then, is that my phone or is that your phone?
I think it was mine. Facebook
Okay.
likes to tell me when you're going live.
So, but I basically I encourage them to let their kids have choices in the meals, and they're more likely to eat those meals if they actually choose some of the foods. Because here, let's be honest, there's no food that is should be considered good or bad morally. It's just like, so take what they like and make it better, make it healthier. That's one option. The other option, I like to make my meals separate items so you can mix and match. So if I do,
That's what I do.
right? So if we're doing pasta, spaghetti type stuff, right? And say you're trying to cut back on your calories, well, you can have your beef, you can have your marinara separate and your pasta separate. So you have control of putting how much you want on your dish. So you could do a lot less carbs and more meat if you're trying to get leaner. I'm a big fan of that. Or another meal could easily be, chicken, potatoes, broccoli, or it could be, I've even done chili this way. I've done a big thing of beans. I've done a big thing of meat, a big thing of vegetables. So and you could do pasta with that too. I know some people like doing, macaroni or whatever with it.
Right.
Um, so that's what I would recommend to most people. Try that, give that a shot and see how it works.
That works. I
Um,
like that. I do that similarly with like that's pretty much how we meal prep is we cook everything that we want to eat for the week separate and then store it separately. And then we can mix and match throughout the week. And that's my favorite way to meal prep because then I don't get bored.
yeah,
Um, and I don't like the way food tastes sometimes after it sits together too long in one container. So that's
right.
actually what we do as well. Because obviously, even if we're following the basic like PN hand portion plates, what I need and like what my husband need are different. So it's easier. We're eating the same foods, but we're eating our amounts. Like so that's really cool. I hadn't thought about doing that um like with chili though, or the pasta separately, like the meat and the sauce. So I like that idea. So right now, I know you've been sharing some really great things on Instagram, Facebook, and even a magazine article that you have written up about you now and published. How do you get your workouts in right now that everyone is at home, that you're at your different schedule, you're not at your gym, maybe, and your kids are all there, everyone's just all crowded in the same space. How do you find time to do that right now or make that work?
Yeah, well, good example. Before all of this, I was working out maybe a total of 6 hours per week, which is a lot for me. And I went from 6 hours per week down to less than 2 hours per week right now. So it is a big change, but I am completely okay with that. I'm not freaking out. I'm not worried about losing anything. First and foremost, that's the most important thing, is to give yourself some grace, adjust your expectations, and be okay with those lower expectations. Because usually what happens is people, just because things are crazy, they go from 5 days a week to 2 days a week, and they don't adjust their expectation down. So they feel guilty. So I have no guilt with this, number one. Number two, I do smaller workouts, shorter workouts, the minimum of what I need to do to maintain muscle. And so I'm focused on doing usually one leg exercise, maybe two, one like push, like a push up, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe some form of a row with a dumbbell or a band. and I might only do 3 or 4 exercises 4 times a week max. And you know what? It's not perfect. Absolutely not. But I could actually get leaner doing that. I could lose fat right now if I wanted to. I could just do that 2 hours a week total and reduce my calorie intake and still get great results. So there's nothing to be upset about with it, right? It's all good.
Yeah, it's adjusting his expectations. That's actually something we've talked a lot about in my small group, is how to adjust to those expectations for yourself. And you're talking about fear, and this isn't, again, these are, as you're talking, I'm like, oh, let's ask these questions too. One of the things that I've been asked that I have had to think about and then determine like what I would do for myself as well is going to be the fear of, like, for a couple weeks or even a month, people are kind of okay with that, right? They're okay with lowering their expectations. But given that there's a lot of uncertainty as to like how long we might be in this type of situation, I've gotten a lot of like fear-based anxiety and concern around like how long can you do that, I guess, and you know
Yeah.
not go backwards, I guess, would be the question. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to be a little bit protective of the identity of the person who asked the question, so I don't want to be too specific. But she's struggling a lot with that, of knowing that this might go on for maybe much longer than originally anticipated, and so she's really scared because she's worked so hard to get where she's at. So what would you speak to about the fear of the uncertainty of how long this might go on?
Yeah. That's a great question. It really is, because I can see that, because it is going to be longer than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I'm a big believer in, though, is you can only do so much right now. So what I would recommend is you reduce the amount of exercise that you're doing every week to a point where you are in control and you are owning that habit, right? Number one, once you're actually in control, your expectations match your output and you're in a good place there, then that's when you can start taking steps forward slowly. So maybe you're only doing, like right now, again, I'm doing less than 2 hours a week right now. So maybe in the coming weeks, I'm going to be able to do 2 hours and then 2.5 hours and then 3 hours. But first, get control before you move forward. Um, and that's what we do with weightlifting. If someone's lifting too much weight and their form gets off, we lower the weight. And that's how you make progress, lowering the weight. So you lower the habit, you lower the frequency of exercise to a point where you're like, you're hitting it every time, you're not missing the workouts.
Right.
And then you step forward, and then you can increase volume, over time. So even at home, maybe right now you can only do 2 hours, but maybe you're going to be able to do 5 hours in a month from now.
I love it. That's great. Okay, so a couple more questions, and then I know we had some questions that are tips and tricks we wanted to share also, which is another portion of that struggle right now, which is the snacking. So I'll ask a couple more, and then we'll move on to that. But so are you one of those people that you like add your kids into your workout and try to get them involved in the movement, or do you try to just do your thing and let them do their thing? And like, how do you incorporate them? Like, how do you handle that? Or is it like a sometimes this,
Yeah.
sometimes that situation?
If if they're in the same room, I try to incorporate them because they're going to get in the way
Mm-hmm.
regardless. So if they're in the same room, I actually will try to I'll say, hey, you want to exercise with me? And usually they want to. And what I found is they'll do squats with me, they'll do planks, push-ups, wall sits, lunges, stuff like that. But after about 10 minutes, they usually walk off because I've interacted with them. They've seen what I'm doing. They've done it themselves. They're like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool, but I'm gonna go play with my toys now. Um, and so, yeah, I typically try to incorporate them because anytime I do, it actually is smoother than if I don't. Absolutely.
Mm. Good pro parenting tip right there.
Yeah. Right.
Just get them involved enough that they get bored.
Well, it's like if you tell someone they can't do something or whatever, right? Then they're more likely to want to do it, and so you let them do it, and they realize after 10 minutes, like, okay, this is fun, but not that fun.
Fun, but not that fun. I love it. So do you have any, you said you mentioned squats, planks, and push-ups. How old are your kids? Like ages are they?
Four, about three, 4.5, 3, and well, the 1-year-old's obviously not doing anything with it, but
Right, right. Okay. So
but yeah.
are there workouts that you find that are easier to incorporate, like if the body weight stuff and bands, do you let them play with bands and stuff too? Like what are your thoughts, I guess, on like kids fitness? Because I have a lot of moms that want to set a good example for their kids as far as movement, but they also don't want to make them feel pressured, I guess, to move or creating sort of like body dysmorphia issues and things like that. So how do you, as a family man, and having your kids these different ages, how do you think about that as a whole? I guess more like
Yeah.
probably family and fitness and food and meal
Okay.
prep and all these
Yeah.
things. How do you keep that in like a healthy mindset framework for your family?
That's great. I wanted to also touch on, because I know some people are worried, like, should kids be exercising,
Right.
right? Like,
Yes.
okay, so first and foremost, with kids and exercise, the research has shown zero research to prove that exercise is not helpful for kids. There's been no research to say that it's bad for kids, their joints, even lifting weights. And I'll give you a good example. So we think of lifting weights, we always just think of like a barbell and dumbbells, right? That's what people think of. But really, weightlifting is not necessarily that. It's an intensity level. And so when you put a kid on monkey bars and they're holding their body weight, their full body weight, my kids can't even do a pull up fully yet on their own. So that's essentially a 1 rep maximum. That's like a power lifter lifting as much weight as they can, right? So if you're okay with your kid hanging on monkey bars or jumping off of stairs or like something and landing, monitored exercise is completely safe. So that's the key there, is monitored and making sure the kids, I mean, if 4 or 5 years old, they don't have egos, but like if a kid is working out with its another 10-year-old, you might want to watch that and make sure that they're not trying to compete against each other. That's the real key, right?
Mm,
So I
mm,
don't think that there's any exercises they absolutely can't be doing. It's more about, excuse me, what exercises can they do with control?
mm,
You know, I won't let them do a pull up on the monkey bar without me kind of guiding them, because I don't want them to get into a weird position. But I let them play around with the 5 pound dumbbells and the bands. You know, it's fun for them. And but usually that ends up being a toy, to be honest.
right.
You know, so but yeah, I think you can be rest assured that as long as like the kids are not lifting to failure or full ability, it's completely safe for their joints. You know, wrestling, playing is harder on their joints than a controlled motion. Totally.
Mm.
My kids wrestle. I mean, they're throwing each other on the ground. And I'm like, holy cow, what was that?
What is happening?
Or just like thud, you know, especially Miles, my middle kid, he hits his head so hard on the floor when they wrestle. It's like, oh my gosh, right? Who else can who like this post, if your kids wrestle and you're like, sometimes they're just cringing looking at how they're grabbing their legs. And anyways, so let's move on to the next part of the question, though, is about the body dysmorphia and making sure people don't are you want to be a good example for your kids. But again, like you said, you don't want to feed into it's all about how you look. And so what my recommendation is with exercise is you make it more about exercise. You make it more about getting being healthy, getting stronger, things like that, more like health related versus, so you don't be like, let's exercise to lose weight. We're exercising to be healthy, be strong, be fit, and have a little bit of fun too, right? So it's about trying to help your kids and giving them a big high five when they're able to do a push up, or like, oh, that was so cool. You know, being able to do a lunge and giving them that encouragement, like they're doing such a great job, because they thrive on that. And when you're teaching them things like a lunge and that balance, that really is going to carry over
Mm,
to them developing their balance moving forward. Um, and being able to do a push up, and those things are, are great. It's not, again, they're just excited to be able to do it. They have no clue about what their body looks like at this point.
Right.
And so you don't make it about that, I think that's important. So
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing. As a
absolutely.
parent, it's great to get that just perspective and ideas and tips and tricks. And I really appreciate that. And I'm storing all this away in like my little safe box for whenever I have kids.
Yeah,
So I'll be
there you
like,
go.
hey, and my little pillow file over here. So so I have kind of like a final question, but I think it'll fit in better after we kind of talk about the other issues going on right now that where people are trying to navigate, which is snacking. So did you have questions coming in from your side about snacking right now? What were
Yeah,
those?
absolutely. I think people are definitely struggling with snacking because they're home all day long now. The food is right there, just like a few steps away, right? Um, and I would think that it's typically some people are in the afternoon and through the day, but I'm guessing it's more at night more so than anything, right? And
Yep,
do you
that
feel
nighttime
like
season.
have you had people or clients as well dealing with this right now? It seems like snacking is a bigger issue than normal for them.
Um, For some, it's a bigger issue than normal if they're used to going to work. For a lot of my clients, they also work from home. So this is an ongoing issue for them. Um, but nighttime snacking seems to be the main thing for everybody if they stay up later. It's that once the kids are in bed, things have calmed down. Now they have alone time. Maybe they're watching a show or something, just trying to like it's interesting to me from a coaching perspective. It always seems to happen when they've reached the point where they just want to turn their brain off and just kind of check out, and then it just becomes like this mindless snacking kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, I wasn't even really hungry. Occasionally I have a client or two, they've under ate the day prior, and so they'll actually be hungry,
Yeah.
which is a different kind of issue. But for the most part, it's when they've reached the point of the day where they're done thinking. And that's when the mindless snacking comes in. So you can see that too. If they do a food journal, they'll be like really, really good or good, and then they'll hit the evening time and they're like, I just ate all the things.
Right,
So
right. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think now what would you say right now? What would you say maybe your top three tips are for people that are struggling with snacking at night?
Um, so a couple of things, snacking at night in particular, um, is my thing is like make whatever is going to make it the easiest thing for you. So if you're some people are limited right now with what they can get access to. So for me, I know I'm going to be a little snacky in the evenings. I'm not personally, that's just not really my thing. But I like I like beverages. So I have to be a little bit more careful with like beverages in the evening. Um, because they can get high calorie if it's not like straight tea or water or something like that. So, but I have a roommate and she loves her snacking in the evening, which means that snacks have started coming into the house that aren't normally here for me.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that now that they're there, I've kind of started to wander a little bit more in throughout the day and been like, oh, these crackers look good. So for me, just having snacks there, and for her, she buys really flavorful yogurt. That's like her thing. She gets like Chobani flavored yogurts, and they have like cinnamon crunch and chocolate chip, whatever. And that's her thing that she has in the evening. She gets a snack that is sweet and kind of addresses a sweet tooth a little bit, but isn't necessarily like a pint of ice cream every single night kind of thing. So she knows that's in there for her. And she does. Every night faithfully. She around like 9 o'clock, she goes in there and she gets her little yogurt and she just enjoys that guilt free, and then
Hmm.
goes to bed shortly thereafter. So one tip would just be like if you're going to have some snacking, then maybe just having something that's not completely detrimental. Like you don't have to always deny yourself the snack or try to like grit your teeth and willpower through it.
Yeah.
There are other options. For me, I like salty crunchy when I do get snacky. It's not really a sweet tooth for me. So I like things like crackers and stuff like that. So I found as funny as it sounds, I know it's such like a white girl thing to say. I actually really do like the little rice cracker, like the little mini ones, because they make them in like flavors like ranch and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and they're crunchy enough and they take long enough to chew
Right.
that I don't need that many. I'll eat like 3 and then I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Or I'm a huge fan of, I know not a lot of people love popcorn, but I love popcorn. And it's actually surprisingly low calorie for what it is.
Yeah.
And there's different variations. So if you want organic or you want stovetop or whatever, there's a million different ways to do popcorn. And so that's finding something that's not going to be completely detrimental to your goals, but still allows you that little snack is probably my favorite tip.
Yeah.
And then the other one is to just kind of, you can't always like hardline cut yours, like just set a timer and be like, after this time, it's, I just don't eat. So if it's like 9, 10 p.m., but I don't love that one as much. I feel like it's very rigid. And
Yeah.
more importantly, it's like, what is the purpose of the stacking? Like, what is it serving or filling in for you? Is it just mindless? You need to do something with your hands. I like to get to the root of what it is that the snacking's doing for you, because if you're hungry, then you need to eat. If you're bored, maybe find something else to do. If it's mindless, then there are other things you can do with your hands while watching TV. So
Yeah.
um, taking the time to just go, why am I doing this, and what is
Right.
it serving for me, can open up a lot more helpful things for you than just saying, no, I won't eat after 7 p.m. at all. Like, that's just, I feel like it's less helpful than it could be. So those are
Yeah.
a couple of my favorite tips with that. What are some of yours?
Well, that was really, really good. I like what you said, though. We're always focused on fixing a quote unquote problem, right?
Mhm.
We're always like, if someone struggles with snacking, a lot of times it's the first reaction is, well, we've got to stop snacking.
Right.
So how do we fix it and all this stuff? And I think that sometimes it's better just to roll with the punches. Like if that's a weakness for you, why not build your nutrition around being able to snack? What if maybe you're just a person who likes to graze? Is that bad? No, it's not. And I think, but for some reason, people think they get these ideas in their head like this is bad, this is not, and I think we have to get away from that a little bit. If
Hmm.
someone wants to graze all day long, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Um, so one of the thoughts on my end is maybe this is a couple of ways you could do this, but you could
Hmm.
not eat breakfast. You could do intermittent fasting, right? So it pushes calories later in the day. So you have more ability to use calories for snacking, number one.
Hmm.
Number two, you could you could break, like say, you know what, I'm not going to have lunch. I'm going to have snacks instead. So say your lunch is like 500 calories typically. You could just not do lunch and you could have 500 calories of snacking. And that's
That's a
not
lot
that
of snacking.
that would be a lot. You could be snacking all day, right? Um, so I feel like I think that's a big one. I don't think a lot of people think about that. It's like why not just break your meal into like three mini meals?
Three mini
Uh,
meals. Yeah.
yeah. The other option is that I like doing hard candy at night if I want something sweet. I think hard candy is one of the best options because what it comes down to is time. The
Time.
more time you have, if you can buy time with a hard candy or herbal tea or something along those lines, you're less likely to eat as many calories snacking. So if you can eat dinner a little bit later, go to bed a little bit earlier, those buy yourself time, you know what I'm saying? Because if you eat at 5 p.m. and then you're going to bed at 10, well, you got 4 or 5 hours of sitting around having the ability to snack. That's rough.
Right.
So if you can be like, well, I could eat 3 Jolly Ranchers and that could last me an hour, you're really not that far in calories for an entire hour.
That's great. Yeah. No, I love that.
So
I think that's one of my favorite things to do with coaching is to deconstruct the the rules and the boxes that we've put around food. Um, First of all, the whole like good bad morality attached to food. That's our like one of our favorites, right? To get rid of. It's like there is no good bad food. That can take some time to work through, but the other is that there's the idea of 3 square meals a day. I think can
Yeah.
be detrimental to a lot of people, because you're like, oh, snacks are bad, or snacks fill in, or but I like to graze all day. And I'm like, so it's about that whole day's worth. Like, however, whenever your day starts and ends, what are
Yeah.
you doing? Your input, output, what are you getting in that day? And then my other thing that I always like to bring up, and I don't know if anybody's noticed this more, because um, thinking about this, and it literally just occurred to me that this might be an issue. Um, I don't know if you have clients like this as well, where like Monday through Friday, they're on their schedule, they're doing really good, and they go to bed a little earlier because they usually have work the next day. But then Friday night through like Sunday, that's a whole different story. Like, there's no schedule, there's no structure. They don't have to go to
Mhm.
bed. They stay up later. That's their time that they want to eat all their fun foods. They're less rigid. Maybe they didn't meal prep for the weekend because they might go out to eat somewhere.
Yeah.
And I keep hearing that all the days feel the same now. And since everyone's home, it's not necessarily a vacation, but our structure is a lot more like a weekend. So every day feels like the weekend.
Yeah, it does.
Um, and they do this thing where like they'll do really well, and then the weekend they go haywire with what they're eating, and they have less movement naturally. Kind of the situation that we're in now, just access to the kitchen 24/7. And that's usually where they'll end up in a caloric surplus, because it is in that weekend, that 48-hour to 72-hour window. Um, and so I think that can kind of happen right now because we feel like we're in this like weekend time all the time.
Yeah.
So I guess that comes down to establishing some new sense of normalcy with the schedule, would you say, right now, with
Yes.
kind of every day being like the weekend? What would
Yeah,
be your
yeah.
recommendations for that?
No, I think that's a really a good point, because I think now is the best time to kind of get rid of the weekend mentality. I
Mm,
think that the closer we can, because right now, typical work week for people, they're eating here, and the weekends they're here. There's this big discrepancy, guys, and the bigger the discrepancy, it almost like keeps cycling itself. So you undereat, so you're hungry, and then you way overeat, so you're full and bloated, and you feel like crap. So then you undereat again because you felt like crap here. So if what we can do is, if we can start getting day to day eating to be closer, it's going to be so much easier long term to lose body fat and feel better and be healthier too. And if we could just, you know, flatten the curve a little bit, right?
that's our own version of flattening the curve.
So yeah, I mean, if you can flatten the curve a little bit with your eating, and it's okay to have higher and lower calorie days, absolutely. So this is a perfect opportunity for that, to find where's the balance. Like, can you get away with having one drink per day every day? Would that be okay? Like for me, usually I'll do one, then I'll have every day, and then I'll do like two on a Friday and Saturday. Could I
Right.
just get away with just one every day? Do I really need? I'm not doing anything. I'm not partying with friends. I'm not going out. So this is a good opportunity, I think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. That's one of the things that I tried really hard to start working first myself, and then as a family. It's just my husband and I right now, but um, basically, and it was separate journeys that we did together. I came to that conclusion a lot faster, and then he kind of had to just do that circular, cycle
Yeah,
grinding there with like, oh, I ate too much, I drank too much, I feel horrible, and then like
right.
finally he was like, you know what? I don't think we need a cheat day. He's like, I think I need, um, he's like, I want to have like one meal during the weekend where I'm not worried about the calories. I'm not worried. Like, I just enjoy it. And then I just go back to normal. I just go back to whatever we normally eat,
Yeah,
drink less, maybe have, the job that he has in particular doesn't really allow him to have drinks during the week per se, because if he's dehydrated, it can affect his safety, because he climbs towers, so it's kind of dangerous. But for me, I'm a sipper anyways, and I like high quality things. So I want a nice glass of wine maybe in the evening, not a heavy pour, an actual like one serving.
yeah,
And I just like to sip on it. It's just nice. And I find that I do that. And then I don't really, again, like you said, like one or two, on the weekends. It's just not, there's no need to try to make up for what I missed out on,
right.
because I've enjoyed it throughout the week, and I eat what I want through the week. I have an idea of like macros and portions, but I don't consider any food off limits other than like I can't really have dairy, so that's unfortunate. But
Yeah.
that's because it doesn't work well, not because I've told myself no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, but beyond that, I mean, if I'll have, non pizzas on a Monday, and then I'll have like a salad on a Saturday. There's no real difference for me. And I found that that makes me feel a lot more freedom around food as a whole. And then
Yeah.
just, it's all kind of the same. It's just what food serves me the best, my body and how I feel and how I perform. And in how I look, and like because how I feel affects how I look and vice versa. So
Hmm.
um, mostly I don't like the bloated feeling. That's like my number one thing that I try to avoid. So yeah, pretty much the same thing, just making
Very
it
cool.
as similarly as possible and just getting like a weekend is a time for rest for other things, but my
Right.
food serves me the same way on a Saturday and a Sunday as it does on a Monday or Tuesday.
Totally.
So yeah,
That makes
about the
sense
same.
now. And what you said earlier, I know we'll probably be closing up here in a minute, but with wine or anything, when you're snacking, guys, like if you're just going like, if you're taking a sip and taking another sip really quickly, you actually don't get, the first sip is usually like the most flavorful. You notice the flavors most, especially with wine or bourbon or whatever, right? It's got the most like kick. So what I recommend is, you set that down, you let it kind of clear out of your mouth before you take another sip, because when you do that, you're actually going to taste more. I did that last night with wine because 2 nights ago, I feel like I went through my wine a little too fast. It took me like 30 minutes to go through a glass. And last night was closer to an hour, and I was able to taste it better and enjoy it more over an hour period versus a 30-minute period. So I got to enjoy it longer, and
Hmm.
I had the same amount of wine. So just remember that, guys, just slow down, enjoy your food longer. Why not, right? Instead of
Exactly.
enjoying more food. But no, I think, do you have any other questions right now? I think we covered most of the stuff. It's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered pretty much everything. I think my closing question was with everyone just feeling overwhelmed right now by everything. What's your most actionable advice? I know a lot of us have been sharing the Tiny Habits resource lately. So maybe following something similar to that or just something else entirely. What would be your most like grab it and go action piece of advice for today?
Yeah, go ahead and below, guys, if you want the Tiny Habits resource, just go hashtag Tiny Habits, and basically kind of going along with that. One of the biggest takeaway right now is to not drop any of your habits that are good for you and healthy for you. Instead, regress or lower the habit frequency or duration, so then you can move forward with them again. So when you're stressed out, still do all your exercise, still do all that stuff, but just reduce the amount of it. And then, because that's going to allow you to take steps forward, use a dimmer switch instead of an on off switch.